Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, we're happy to have you along. So let's start with a little bit of business. We have received a lot of interest in the Tefila series, and I keep getting letters. So we made a special page where you could sign up for the Tefila series if you're interested. We're going to start after Pesach. That's the plan. So go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/Tefila, and you can say, I'm interested. No commitment at that point, but say, I'm interested in joining this year. What time is good for me? And like I say, we're trying to find a time that will accommodate the most amount of people. And my producer, Michael, said so far the only time that looks like it's not good for people is Friday night. Every other time seems to be some people are good for it, some people are not. So we'll do the best we can. And the point is to try to make the maximum amount of people unhappy as possible. And that's what we always try to do. If I can spread a little unhappiness. Chas v'shalom. Yeah. So, okay. That's our bits of business. And onwards. We're talking about the Mishkan. And it's very interesting. If you go to the Living Torah by Aya Kaplan, it's a translation of the Torah into English. To the best of my knowledge, it is the only English translation of the Torah. ArtScroll translates it into a dialect that's very similar to English, but isn't actual English. And the problem with translations is it's always tricky because there's different ways of speaking, you know? So if you say, God spoke to Moshe saying, no one says that in English. So Aya Kaplan, for example, writes, why don't you do such and such, says God. Or God said. The way you would write it in English. It's a brilliant, brilliant work. He writes in his introduction, it took him 9 months to write the translation of the Living Torah. It would take me 9 months just to look up all the books in the bibliography. It's so extensive. If you ever have a chance, just take out some time and read the bibliography. It's absolutely fascinating. He did this all in 9 months. I heard a story once, and again, I didn't check it out. I'm not Pesach Kron, but wherein these two guys were writing a paper on his translation, and they went to see his widow and said, could we see the notes that he used to put it together? He says he didn't use any notes. He just sat down and wrote straight, which is an unbelievable thing. They put out a rough draft of Gvuras Hashem that the Maharal had written, and you can see what he added and took out and things like that. It was edited. But he just sat down and wrote, and it's unbelievable. But he writes in his introduction that one of the reasons for writing this was so that people would understand the Mishkan. That's what he says. He says that, unfortunately, it's something that is seen as esoteric and not having relevance to our lives, and he wanted to make it as clear as he possibly could. So that's what we said at the beginning. The fact is that a lot of people don't appreciate that the Mishkan is an essential part of our life as Jews. It's something that's meaningful. So let me give you one example when I talk about relevance. The malachos you're not allowed to do on Shabbos are boyim chosa achas. Strange way of saying it. Yeah, 40 less 1, which means 39. Why don't you just write 39? The Tosfos Yontif on the Mishnah writes, because we have a certain way of expressions in Chazal. So when you want to say a few in English, or you say there were 2 or 3 people there, whatever it is. In Hebrew, he says, in Mishnaic language, we say 4 or 5. Arba v'chamesh. And he says, because The concept of 4 or 5 you find in Parashat Mishpatim. When you steal a cow and sell it or shecht it, you have to pay back 5 cows. When you steal a sheep and sell it or shecht it, you have to pay back 4 sheep. So 4 or 5 becomes the expression of when you want to say a few. 4 or 5. Arba chamesh. That's what he says. Whereas the only time you find the number 39 in the Torah is by Malchus. And it says you give 40, and then they learn from the pasuk that you leave off 1. So it's really 39. So you see 40 less 1 is the way we say 39. That's the way the Tosfos Yontif explains it. But we'll see. In any event, there are 39 halachos. How do we know the halachos? We look at the building of the Mishkan. So we say, okay, they had to grow flax in order to make the linen. What went into the growing of flax? They had to boil up the spices. What goes into boiling? They had to treat the tachash hides and cut them into pieces. What goes into preparing hides? They had to spin the wool in order to make the coverings. What goes into taking wool and making it able to spin and weave it? So all of these things they analyze, and they come up with the things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Seems a little backwards, no? We have a Beis HaMikdash 410 years the first time, 420 years the second time. But a lot of the things in the Mishkan didn't go into the Beis HaMikdash. We didn't have the Krushim. We didn't have the Yirios. Yeah. So if you look at the time of the Mishkan, 40 years in the desert, 39 actually, because we didn't put it up till the second year. 39 years in the desert. We were in Eretz Yisrael for 850 years. Take off 410 for the Beis HaMikdash. That leaves 440. And over 360 years, we had Shiloh, which was not the Mishkan. So you're talking about less than 200 years of Jewish history that we had the Mishkan. And we spend all of this time, as we mentioned, Truma and Tetzava and half of Kisisa and Vayako and Pekude, to tell me all about the building of the Mishkan, which stood for less than 200 years. And from there, we learn out Hilchos Shabbos, which we have to keep every single week for over 3,300 years. Do you see how it's a little backwards? It's not supposed to work that way. Tell me Shabbos. This is what you can do on Shabbos. This is what you can't do on Shabbos. And then take all the building of the Mishkan and put it in a brisa. There is a brisa, Melechas and Mishkan. So you managed to put this stuff in the Mishkan. It's okay. You know all the laws of Shechita? There's a lot of laws of Shechita. It's a very complicated area. You know where it appears in the Torah? Hashem says to Moshe, you will shech the animals the way I showed you on Har Sinai. That's it. No laws, it's all written in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So surely we could have put all of the building of the Mishkan and all the materials that went into it into the Torah Sheba'al Peh. It seems a little backwards to start with the Mishkan and work backwards from there to figure out Shabbos. Tell me Shabbos. I mean, it seems a pretty obvious question. And when you find that the ikr is not there, it has to make you suspicious. I.e., most of the laws of Tekiah Shofar are learned out from Yovel. Yovel is once every 50 years, and it was only during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and there was 70 years that they didn't keep it. If you make the cheshbon, there were less than 10 Yovels in all of Jewish history, whereas there have been over 3,300 Rosh Hashanah. And we learn out the laws of blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah from Yovel? Again, it seems a little backwards. So you got to be suspicious when you see something like that happen. Okay. So let's take a look at Shabbos. On Shabbos, you have to rest. Why? Because Hashem rested. Now, he didn't really work that hard. Right? I mean, besides the fact that he's infinite. So it's not like he gets one out. Friday night, he went out and had a couple of drinks with some friends and said, "You can't believe the week I just had," right? Basara Mamaras, never all of them. The entire world was created with 10 expressions. That's all he had to do. He spoke 10 times. Or if you have an old translation, he spake 10 times. Thus saith the Lord. Anyway, so that was the whole big deal. So what does it mean he rested? Obviously, it doesn't mean he rested because he was tired. It means he stopped creating. Vayishbois. He stopped from making the world. It's interesting. The Chassam Sofer says, Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem es hashamayim v'es haaretz. 6 days the world was created. Hashem made the world. It should have said bisheishes yamim. In 6 days he created the world. It doesn't. It says 6 days he created the world. Strange. The answer is that it's not that it took him 6 days to create the world. He was creating for 6 days, and then the 6 days ended and he stopped. So it's not that it took him 6 days to create the world. Between me and you, he could have done it in a moment, a nanosecond. Probably less because he's outside of time, so he doesn't even have any time, right? Well, he created the world in 6 days so that it took him 6 days. But not because he needed 6 days. In 6 days he created, and then he stopped creating. And when the 6 days were over, he stopped creating. You see, he threw in a few extra things during Ben Hashmashos, Twilight, got in a few things, during that twilight of creation. 10 things. But he created for 6 days, and then he stopped. Says the Chassam Sofer, that's why there's a mistake where people think that you're done, your life is done, you finish what you have to accomplish, and then you die. Obviously not. Avraham Avinu had 10 tests. After he passed those 10 tests, he finished that last one when he was 137, and he died at 175. So it doesn't work that way. Yitzchak was blind and considered as if he was dead, but he was still alive. He didn't die. So it says Chassam Sofer, it's not that you're finished and then you die. You die, that's why you're finished. Or as someone used to add a tagline to their emails. I don't know if people still do this, but they used to add taglines at the bottom of their emails. You get some fun quotes. Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when he finished the third book, he called it The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Trilogy. When he put out the fourth book, he wrote the fourth in the inappropriately named Hitchhiker Trilogy. When he put out the fifth book, he wrote the fifth in the continuingly inappropriately named Hitchhiker. Anyway, so someone had a tagline, a quote from him where he said, I don't know if I went everywhere I was supposed to go, but I think I ended up where I was supposed to be. I think that's a fine observation. Anyway, but someone had a different tagline. When you die, your inbox will not be empty. It's not that you've finished answering your last email and now you can die. No, there's always stuff going on. You'd never finished. This woman set as a goal she's going to do all the laundry. And she did everything. She washed every piece of clothing, and she felt so good. And then she realized, oh no, my children are wearing things. It's never over. So the Yishbos just means that Hashem stopped. What did he stop? He stopped creating the world. So to commemorate this, what do? We stop from creating the world. Now that's very easy because I can go months without making as much as an asteroid. What do you mean, stop from creating the worlds? It's very easy. We don't create worlds. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to give us a world to create. That was the Mishkan. It was a microcosm of the entire universe. And we didn't build the Mishkan on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you don't build the Mishkan. One can go into why that is, but the Mishkan is a place of holiness in space, and Shabbos is a holiness in time. But okay. So what it means that we rest on Shabbos, it means we rest from creating the Mishkan. So you have to tell me the Mishkan because that's the basis of the creation of the world. I'll give you something a little Kabbalistic for those of you who are Kabbalistically oriented. There are the 10 spheres. Right? We've spoken about them in the past. 7 we're pretty familiar with. Those are the ones when you count spheres ha'omer, even in your art scroll siddur, you have the first week is Chesed, and then Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. And each one of those weeks we work on those. Sukkot is condensed. Each day we work on one of those. And those 7, of course, correspond to parts of the body. Your right arm, your left arm, yeah. So different parts of the body are represented by those. The 7 kochve leches, which are called the celestial objects that can be seen with your naked eye. The sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn represent those 7 lower spheres. The Ushpizin on Sukkot represent the 7 kochos. Avraham is obviously Chesed, Yitzchak is Gvura, right? Dovid HaMelech is Malchus, right? So those 7 we access a lot. They're the 7 days of the week. As I mentioned, the Koch Veleches, so Chesed is the sun, which gives the light and the heat. So the first day of the week is Sunday. Gvura is represented by the moon. That's what the second day of the week is Moon Day. Shabbos is represented by Saturn. That's why the last day of the week is called Saturn Day. Yeah. So they represent days of the week. So those are the 7. And then there's the top 3 that we don't usually access. They're called the mochin, which is the brain. And it's usually Chachma, Bina, and Keser, although there's another way of doing Chachma, Bina, and Das, but okay. So picture the skull and the 2 parts of the brain. You know, one is stronger in men and one is stronger in women. That's Chachma and Bina. You know, women have Bina Yisera. And so certain people are left brain and right brain. Yeah, it tends to go stronger in men and in women. And that's why Chachma and Bina in Kabbalah is also called the Av and the Aim, the father and the mother. Fine. So those are the 10 spheres, and they pop up a lot in Judaism. Mostly the lowest 7. It's hard to access those top 3. We do on special occasions like the Aseret Yemei Tshuva and things like that. But for the most part, we work with the bottom 7. But there are 10 spheres. Now, in Kabbalah, they talk about the 4 levels of existence. It's known by the abbreviation Abiyah, which stands for Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. 4 different, and you can see in the story of creation. Yeah, it starts with Bereshis Bara Elokim. That's Bria. Atzilus is the Aleph before the Beis of Bereshis. And then you can find Yetzira and Asiya throughout the story, but fine. 4 levels. Says the Sfas Emes, each one of those 4 levels has 10 spheres. Altogether, that comes out to 40. Obviously, a big number in Judaism. 40 different spheres in all of creation. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu used to make this world that we're in. If you ever go to a mall and you have the big map and your little arrow, you are here. You are here in Malchus of the world of Asiya. You're all the way at the bottom of these 40. The top is the beginning of the process, what is known as Yesh Ma'ayin, creating something from nothing. That original point of creation. So that's 40. And this is an idea a number of the Mekubalim talk about. You can find this written out in the Nesiva Shalom. He speaks it out well. And he says, you do certain physical actions down in this world and you access certain spiritual powers. Simplest example is when you wave your Dalet Minim in the 4 directions. All right? So when you do that, it affects the winds, it affects the Tal. So you're able to do certain things down here that access certain powers up there. And so he says there are 40 actions that we used, physical actions, I should say 39, physical actions that we did to create the Mishkan, which is our world that we created. There's one of these 40 that you can't access, and that's Yesh Ma'ayin. We can't create something from nothing. We can only work with what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. That's why, says the Sfas Emes, it's not 39. It's 40 less 1. And I can't tell you which corresponds to which, but when you plow, that's accessing one of these spheres. When you weave, that's accessing one of these. Now, I'm sure real Mekubalim could probably line these up for you. I can tell you that Nesiva Shalom doesn't. But what it means is that we do a physical action down here and it accesses that spiritual power that went into the creation of the world. We can't create the world on a mega level, but we can do it on a mini level. That's what we do when we make the Mishkan. So the Mishkan isn't just everything that's in the world is in the Mishkan. So Rashi says, for example, the Yurios were held together with 50 blue loops and gold hooks that held it together. And the gold hooks in the blue loops are supposed to look like the stars in the heavens. That's one example. There are examples of everything that goes into the construction of the world that's in the construction of the Mishkan. Now let's take it, as Rabbi Tatz likes to say, a little deeper. Yes, the Malbim and Parshas Truma says that everything that goes into the Mishkan, in fact, corresponds to the human body. You can hear this, yes. I have to be very careful because sometimes when I imitate people, I get stuck in them for days. I once spent an entire week as Rabbi Wine. It was a little touchy. Anyway, I won't do it. Anyway, but that's why somebody once said it's so hard to impersonate you in the Purim play because you're so many different people. It's like doing somebody with multiple personality disorder. Anyway, so someone asked me, do you have multiple personality disorder? I said, I don't, but he does. Anyway, the Malbim in Parshas Truma explains how everything in the Mishkan is a macrocosm of a human being. The Kroshim represent the rib cage. The 3 coverings over it represent the 3 layers of your skin, the dermis, epidermis, and endodermis. I got a 90 on the biology regions. Thank you very much. Anyway, the aron is your skull, and the 2 luchos, one represents the left side, and one represents the right side of your brain, and the broken luchos represents your subconscious mind. You see how this works? So when we talk about the Mishkan, we're talking about something that's there for us to access the level that we have as the potential inside of us. You need the Mishkan to be fulfilled as a person. Like I say, Adam Rishon didn't need it, but he didn't need a bris milah either. He was born already mal. He also didn't need to prepare bread. It grew on the trees. But now that the world is messed up, we need some way to be able to communicate. That's why Machlekes Rashi and Ramban, if we would have built the Mishkan with or without the Chet HaEgel, but Rashi says it's only there for the Chet HaEgel. Why? Because if we didn't do the Chet HaEgel, didn't build the golden calf, then we would have reached the level of Adam in Gan Eden when we got the first set of luchos at Har Sinai. As it says, Al Tikrei Charis al luchos ela cheres al luchos. Cheres min amisa. No more death. Cheres min shicha. Cheres min ayetza hara. That would be it. We'd go back to where we were supposed to be. We didn't. So now we had to build a world in order for us to be able to artificially access that power. So we're going to talk about this more next time, because I want to speak a little bit about the Big Day Kahuna and how that also helps us access our humanity. But now I want to move to our question and answer segment. Anonymous asks, would Rabbi Orlofsky prefer if people wrote their real names when submitting questions? No, I don't care. And let me clarify. It bothers me to no end when people write letters to the editor in Jewish publications anonymously. It bothers me to no end when people make comments online anonymously. Coward. If you're not interested in signing your name to it, then keep your mouth shut. It gets me so upset. Because people have no problem attacking people online or in print and then writing their name anonymous. You want to attack someone who was brave enough to stand up and say something? You want to disagree with them? Have the guts to sign your name to it. And if you're too cowardly to sign your name to it, don't write. Keep your mouth shut. It's unbelievable. I don't know if you can sense this, but I have been attacked online and also in publications. There was, I wrote for many years for the Hamodia. And occasionally somebody would write in a letter as a complaint, and they would always give me the letter first so I could publish a response in the question and answer section, which to me is the only decent thing to do. But there was another Jewish publication that wanted me to write for them, and I was not interested. And they said, okay, well, can we ask you questions and we'll write it up? I wasn't happy about it, but I said, okay. It was a very nice lady who was asking me the questions and writing it up, and I think she did a fine job. Somebody wrote a letter into the editor attacking what I said, clearly not understanding what I said. They never gave me the letter beforehand. They never gave me a chance to respond. And after that, I said, I'm never writing for your publication again. You let somebody write in and attack me without giving me the chance to be anonymously, without giving me the chance to respond? I see the most horrific things written in these letters to the editor columns, and these cowards sign anonymously. Write your name so that somebody can come to you and say, you said this? Stand behind your words. And if you don't want to stand behind your words, keep your mouth shut, coward. Anyway, that's just my feeling. But the person is submitting a question. Who cares? I don't have to know who you are. And I have the option of choosing your question or not choosing your question. I don't choose all the questions. First of all, I don't have time. Second of all, I don't like some of the questions. I'm not going to answer them. It's my podcast. I do what I want. Okay. Anonymous asks, how do I know when I'm ready to start Shidduchim? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. The Gemara says, Shmona Esrei L'chuppah. When you're 18. The standard line that people give in response is, I'm davening a long Shmona Esrei. But okay. Yeah. But the Gemara says, parents are obligated to support their children until they're old enough to make it on their own. But until then, you're supposed to support your children. How old is that? 5. If the kid's a little slow, 6. And then you call in the child and you say, well, son, it's time for you to make it on your own. It's been a pleasure having you here. Good luck. Anyway, I did this Gemara once, and someone said to me, that's changed today, right? I said, yeah, now it's about 45, and that's only because you're hoping one of your parents die and you get the Yerusha. Here in Eretz Yisrael, a couple gets married, and every Shabbos they go to the parents and the in-laws, and then the parents and the in-laws, the parents and the in-laws, and they continue doing this until their own children get married and start coming to them, so then they have to stay home and make Shabbos for the first time. So obviously things have changed, yeah? But let's put it this way. The general principle is that marriage is a good thing. You should get married. Rabbi Meir says, yeah, I got married at 14. If I would have gotten married at 13, I could have spit the Satan in the eye. Because it's a great way to spend your teenage years being married, you know, with all the nisyonis that are out there and all the terrible things. It's nice to come home. The Gemara says that a girl got married when she was a Nara. If she was a Bogeres, she was already considered over the hill. A Nara is between 12 and 12 and a half. If she's already over 12 and a half, the parents are going crazy. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this girl? The Hasidim, sometimes you still find this way, the Hasidim. Somebody asked from Yoel, the Satmar Rebbe, if you have a chassan and a bar mitzvah boy, who gets the maftir? He said, whoever's older. So today, you know, people say, well, you know, people aren't mature enough, people aren't this, people aren't that. Okay. I think it really depends on the person. Some people are mature and are ready to take on obligations. And some people, you can wait a very long time and they're not. So how do you know? It is always good to have a spiritual advisor, be it a Rebbe or a Rebbe or a Mashbiya or a smart friend, you know, or whoever's in charge of the institution, whatever it is, someone who's able to know you and advise you correctly. So there are obviously certain considerations, right? If a person finds that being unmarried is causing him thoughts of immorality and possibly immoral actions, and a person's going to get married and it's going to straighten him out, that's a good thing. My rule of thumb is when you're not happy being alone and you want to have somebody in your life. Yeah. So, you know, obviously you have to know what you're doing and you have to know the other person. And there are those who suggest, you know, premarital counseling. One time I gave a shiur to guys who were in dating about what to look for when you're dating and basic overview. And someone wrote me and said, I heard about this, and I asked one of the Rebbeim in my yeshiva to do it. What should we cover? Well, we gave them a few ideas for a curriculum. But the more preparation you have going into it, the better it'll be. Because the world has changed. Because my father and my mother said we'd learn to love each other. So Goldie, now I'm asking, do you love me? Yeah. Rabbi Twersky, that's Al. He said, I feel so bad for you, Litvisha. Somehow you think you have to develop a meaningful relationship before you can get married. It takes years to develop a meaningful relationship. You're not going to be able to do it in 3 months, 6 months. It takes years. He said, by the Hasidim, we don't even pretend. You know? Yeah, everything looks good. You find each other attractive and enjoy being with each other. You know, you share the same values. You get married. You have the rest of your life to work out, you know, all those details. I was speaking once in the Yerushalayim, and one of the girls said something like, you know, but you can't put a number on it. You know, you have to know the other person before you get married. You know, like, what's their favorite color? So at the time, I'd been married over 30 years. I went home, I said, honey, what's your favorite color? She goes, I don't know. I never thought about it. And yet we managed to have 11 children without knowing our favorite color. So, when you feel like you want something. Now, here's the most important thing. You want to go into this relationship not for me, but because I want to build something in Klal Yisrael. When my parents got married, you wanted to marry a Jewish person and build a Jewish home and have Jewish children and bring them up. That was the overriding consideration. Now, if you want more on this subject, I did a whole series on the topic of Shidduchim and dating and marriage, which you can find wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, or you can find it on my website and listen to it over there. So you'll have a lot more information on this topic. Anonymous asks, if you have a full-time job and your wife works and you don't overspend, is taking a loan to survive justified? I don't know what you mean by justified. Is it sensical? No, absolutely not. You have to live on the money that you have. When I got married, my father, Shalom, who was the master of the double message, when I got married, he said to me, you have to learn one phrase, I can't afford it. Whatever it is, I can't afford it, I can't afford it. One time he came by the house and he says, why don't you fix this? Why don't you get that? And I said, Dad, I can't afford it. He said to me, don't be a cheapskate. So the answer is, sometimes there are unexpected expenses, i.e., someone gets hurt and they need medical treatment, or they can't work. Your car suddenly breaks down, or you have a chasana. So then, okay, so I'm kind of stuck. I need money to carry me through this difficult time. But if I'm borrowing to live on, it can't work that way. Now, there are a few organizations, and if anybody's interested, you can contact me. I could try to put you in contact with one of the people I know who works with one of these organizations, where they work to get you out of debt. Because people do what you're saying. They borrow money. They run from gemach to gemach. They borrow from this one and that one, and they get themselves so into debt they can't get out. And they reorganize them. They take away all their credit cards. They can only spend cash. They show how to cut all of their expenses, and you can only spend what you can spend. And and you have to save for unexpected occurrences. It used to be that concept, put it away for a rainy day. Everyone had savings. Today, people are not so good at having savings. They just wait. So you can hope there'll be another pandemic and Joe Biden will keep sending you checks, but that's not a way to live a life. Yeah? You have to be fiscally responsible. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. You gotta be reasonable. That's my opinion on the topic. Okay, that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment. You can send an email. You can sign up for your interest in the upcoming Tefila series. You can join Daf Yomi. You can join the new page every single day. Yeah, you can join one of the two Mesilas Yesharim classes that are ongoing. I have people who join. They usually give a little background so that they know what we're holding, but everything that he says is a gem. You can listen to some of our music choices. Yeah. And that's it. You can sponsor an episode. That's it. For real now. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.